Pakistan's Defence Minister Khawaja Asif has once again defended his country's hybrid model of governance, insisting that the military and civilian leadership work by consensus in managing state affairs. Speaking to British-American journalist Mehdi Hasan, Asif dismissed suggestions that army dominates Pakistan's politics while controversially describing US democracy as a deep state.
No, I'm a political appointee. I'm a political worker, you know.
But I'm saying in other countries, in this country, we're in the US, Peter Hegseth can fire the top American general. You can't fire the top American general.
You know, they have a different model over here.
Yeah, it's called democracy.
No, it's called deep state, you know.
Well, civilian rule.
It's a deep state.
Pakistan doesn't have a deep state.
You know, every country has a deep state.
But in your country, the deep state's in charge. No. That's what the accusation is.
We are, you know, it's you can say that because of our military rulers, yes. 4 military rulers.
Yes.
So it is more, you know, visible. It's not like.
But who's in charge is what I'm trying to understand. Where does power lie?
I said it is hybrid, you know.
So it's equal.
It's not equal.
If you and Asif Munir disagree on something, who gets the last word?
We can agree to disagree.
I understand you can disagree, but then what happens? Let's say you want to go left and he wants to go right. Who wins that argument?
No, it is by consensus, whatever is taking place. You know.
And turning to geopolitics, Asif also insisted that Pakistan's tilt towards Washington under US President Donald Trump with new minerals and crypto trade deals would not jeopardize Islamabad's ties with Beijing.
In the past, China, and even today, and inshallah in future also, Pakistan has been a very reliable ally, a very reliable you know, provider of arms of all kinds to us. You know, our Air Force, our submarines, JF-17 and 10, both are Chinese planes. Our submarines are from there. Almost a major portion of our arms are from China, and our defense cooperation is increasing. It is much more robust than before.
With China?
With China. And then the main reason is unreliability of other sources like the United States of America.
So then are you basically saying your strategic future is with China, not the US?
Yeah, but you know, because
they're a reliable ally.
They're reliable, and they are our neighbors. We share borders, and
yes.
we share the geography.
And the interview also turned uncomfortable at times when Asif was confronted about his shifting claims on jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan's social media activity. At one point, he alleged that Khan was operating his account from the Adiala jail. When reminded that he had earlier accused India of controlling Khan's account, Asif appeared flustered. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking time out. You know, if you could go through parts of what Khawaja Asif is suggesting. He's saying multiple things there. But let's focus on he defending his country's hybrid model of governance. When asked by Mehdi Hasan, a very important question on who has the last vote when it comes to important decision-making in Pakistan, he's not making a clear response. He's not giving a clear response. You know, he's not saying that military takes the one-upmanship while also suggesting that we try and build consensus. So speaking in between lines there.
Well, you know, one thing is very clear, that this word hybrid used to describe the governance, it doesn't exist in the Pakistan constitution. So this word hybrid is an unconstitutional word as far as Pakistan is concerned. So clearly what is happening in Pakistan today, and the defense minister, Khawaja Asif, has more or less admitted it's an unconstitutional system, because the constitutional provides for the supremacy of the elected government. But in practice, we know that this supremacy does not exist, and that the Pakistan army has been changing governments at their own will and whim. And they are the ones who decide who will be in power and who will not. You know, we know, for example, that they at one time favored Imran Khan as the prime minister, and so he became the prime minister. But then they fell out. with Imran Khan as Prime Minister because he was being too independent and did not want to follow what the army was saying, and then he was removed. Whatever happened. So I think the old saying about Pakistan is that in all other countries, the state has an army, but in Pakistan, the army has a state. So, this is an old quotation about Pakistan, which shows that it is the army that has been running supreme. It's the army which has been deciding what to do. The army has been taking power, has been making governments, and has been exercising power. When Musharraf was in power, Ayub Khan was in power, all the army generals have been in power, and then, tried to mold the political system according to their own fancy. And actually, this has been the biggest problem of dealing with Pakistan, that, dealing with the government is absolutely of no use because the government has no power. Whereas it's the army who controls the power. We've seen, for example, when India wanted to, has always been wanting to say that on a reciprocal basis, Pakistan should give most favored nation status to India. But they never did it. At one point, the political government, the elected government, was very close to granting this MFN status to India. And the army actually put out a press release saying that they will not accept this ever. So, of course, now we know this is all old history, and at the moment, of course, India has certainly unequivocally withdrawn its own MFN status for Pakistan. With no use giving it because Pakistan was never giving reciprocal acceptance. But at that time, at one point, it is the army which steps in and even put out a press release saying that they will not ever accept MFN status for India. So I think there is absolutely no two ways about it, that the army is fully in control.
And I think, if anything, Khawaja Asif's interview makes it amply clear, his absence of response or lack of response, lack of clarity is itself a response there. But, on another important question vis-a-vis Pakistan's tilt towards Washington, we heard the Prime Minister yesterday speaking in UNGA, praising, Donald Trump for bringing to halt the India-Pakistan war and insisting that they wanted to nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Later, there was a meeting between Prime Minister and the US President. So there is a clear tilt here towards Washington. But you also have Khawaja Asif saying that, don't worry, this tilt doesn't mean we're shifting away from China. It's going to be a difficult balancing act for Pakistan.
Well, yes, this is a very, very strange conundrum that is emerging. We know that Pakistan has for decades been, in the Chinese lap, as it were, and the friendship is described as higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, and, a great kind of solidarity with China. And then suddenly we find that for the last few months, Asim Munir was suddenly invited to lunch by the President of the United States, President Trump. And it was an absolutely unprecedented situation where, rather than the head of government or head of state of a country, the country's army chief, the Field Marshal Asim Munir, is invited to lunch. So it was a complete breakaway, and there are many speculations on this, why it has happened. And of course, there are speculations about whether it has to do with Iran, whether it has to do with Bagram base, whether it has to do with the cryptocurrency deals which benefit the President Trump's family, whether it has to do with the exploration of oil or the exploration of critical minerals that on which an agreement has been signed on 8th September in Islamabad between USA and Pakistan. Now, all this is a very, very strong movements towards a definite understanding between Pakistan and the USA. At the same time, when you hear Khawaja Asif, Defense Minister of Pakistan, saying that, it is China that is more important for them than USA, it leads one to wonder, is it that China and USA are in the know? Are they both in the know? Are they both, is it a kind of a G2 that is working between China and USA? And we know that certainly President Trump seems to be very keen on this G2 formula, that China and USA will together decide whatever happens in the rest of the world. China has not yet agreed on this, and the big, beautiful deal that President Trump wants with China is still a deal in the making. But what you're saying and what comes out in this interview with Khawaja Asif, Defense Minister of Pakistan, clearly shows that China knows about it. That's why they've been keeping remarkably quiet, because there's no way that China could have kept quiet all these months when these rapid and totally unexpected developments with USA and Pakistan relations have been going on, it seems that they are in the know. There is some kind of an understanding between them. And why it is so can only be explained if they have agreed on some kind of a G2. Similarly with Bangladesh, what is happening between Bangladesh and USA right now is totally different from what Bangladesh has been saying about their relationship with China. And Bangladesh is dependent for 80% of its arms procurement on China. But still, they've been going ahead with what they've been doing with USA signing a non-disclosure agreement, having military exercises, Air Force exercises, intensive military training. All this shows that China has been kept in the picture on these issues, and that is why they are not really making any kind of a response or reaction to these developments. And it is very unusual, and I think one has to try and figure out why it's happening. For me, I think it seems there's some kind of a G2 understanding between China and the USA.
If you can hear me, ma'am, I would like to pick your brains on G2 for a moment. So you are essentially saying that China is in the know-how of Pakistan's closeness with the US. Essentially, that hypothetical G2 that we've been hearing about, there are all the more evidences now that it's not hypothetical anymore.
It does seem so. I mean, certainly the outcome of this interview and many other, as I said, many other steps that have been happening between Pakistan and USA, it's inexplicable because, for example, I spoke about the critical minerals exploration deal, one of those that was apparently signed on the 8th of September. Earlier, it was being said that China had been given access to these rare earths and critical minerals in Pakistan. And, and now suddenly you have a deal between America and Pakistan on this subject. How has this happened? And China is keeping quiet on it. We do know that the Democratic Party in the USA has for a long time, people like Barack Obama, former president, and Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, they have been actually in favor of a G2 agreement between China and USA.
Right.
And they think that that's the only way to fix Russia. But we know that President Trump in his first term was not in favor of such an agreement, and he's been talking very clearly on the importance of the friendship and partnership with India as an important aspect of what USA sees as how they need to deal with China, which they consider clearly as their primary adversary and primary competitor and primary rival. But in the second term of President Trump, this has been quite different.
Right.
He's not been thinking about this at all. So it does seem that President Trump, to some extent, has accepted this concept of the G2 and rather is wanting to develop the concept of the G2. And that's why he talks about this big, beautiful deal between China and the USA. And we know, for example, recently that American Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had a telephone conversation with his Chinese counterpart, and he said things like, we are not interested in regime change in China.
Right.
We have a conflict with you. So what does it all mean? Does it mean that they're accepting the Chinese position on Taiwan? These are things which are happening, a lot of these things at the same time, and I think one needs to sit back and try and understand why these things are happening.
All right. Thank you for putting that in perspective. Before I let you go, another moment there which made Khawaja Asif perhaps flustered, uncomfortable when he was confronted with the facts that, he went on to suggest that Imran Khan, in fact, the former Prime Minister, is operating his social media account from the jail. At earlier point, they had said India is controlling it. So, there is no clarity. They're contradicting what they're saying earlier.
Yes, of course. I mean, this is Pakistan's old habit to blame everything on India. And certainly India has nothing to do with Imran Khan's Twitter account. But to think that, the fact that Imran Khan, even from jail, is putting all these things out on his account is a very poor reflection on what the Pakistan government is able to do. But to think that it's being blamed on India is completely unacceptable.
Right.
And similarly, when Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif spoke in the UNGA yesterday, he tries to talk about their victory in the events in Operation Sindoor, whereas the visuals, the destruction of the command and control center at Noor Khan base, the satellite photographs, everything shows the absolute opposite. And India's complete destruction of all the terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan, whether Murid ke, Bhavalpur, other parts of POK, all of this is absolute strong evidence. And we know that how many of their terrorists died, and the Pakistan army is wanting to attend their funerals, but still they will go on and say the exact opposite in the UNGA. So, this is a double kind of a statements that Pakistan adopts at different times. And one has to be very firm in countering their narrative all the time, because it's completely untrue what they're saying. And of course, our officer, a young diplomat at the UN, she rebutted, she took the right of reply and rebutted all the points that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had made, which was very well done indeed. But it's really something that one has to keep a track of and rebut all the time, because they make the most outrageous statements at the drop of a hat.
All right, and one of those statements, of course, was contradicted by the Defence Minister of Pakistan himself yesterday. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking time out for putting this in perspective.